Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guests are Ronald and Philip Kinsella. Before I bring them on, I want to remind you to subscribe to Forbidden Knowledge News on Odyssey. We're always available on all podcast platforms, and definitely check us out on Rokfin, where you get all of our amazing premium content. You can get that at rokfin.com/FKN+, or click the link in the description. And finally, if you guys are reaching that gray hair stage in life, check out C60 Purple Power. It may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man. I've been taking it for over a year and I feel great. You can even get C60 for your pets. It's had amazing effects on our senior dog, including even shrinking or tumors. Click the link in the description. You can get 10% off your order plus free shipping. Today I want to welcome Ronald and Philip Kinsella. Ronald is a writer, artist, and hosts a radio show, Twin Souls, along with his identical twin brother, Philip, which is part of the Paranormal UK radio network. They've been studying UFO subject for many years. Philip is an award-winning medium and has appeared on national television and international radio. He has authored various books and many articles, not only on UFOs, but also aspects of the afterlife. Ronald and Philip, welcome. How are you guys doing today?
Thank you, Chris. I'm very well, thank you very much. Yes, yeah, very well indeed. Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having us on. It's an honor.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. I was really looking forward to your presentation in Laughlin. Unfortunately, because of the COVID restrictions and all the nonsense with that, you guys won't be able to make it this time, but you will be back in March, and hopefully I'll be back in March too to attend then. But we're going to be able to discuss your experiences today, which I'm really excited about. And you guys have had a lifetime of experiences and so much to discuss, amazing stuff. I think that we should start with where it all started for each of you. Let's actually start with Philip, since he is on the left side here. Let's start with you. When did this all start for you here?
Well, it really started when we were 13 years of age, and my brother and myself were staying with our maternal grandmother in Middlesex, Feltham. They lived in quite a large house, and my brother and I were outside the back garden with our grandmother, and we saw what we thought, first of all, was a silver balloon coming across a clear blue sky. But the object started to operate with intent, and it seemed to rapidly get to us very quickly. And before we knew it, it had come over the tree and then was hanging over our grandmother's head. And, you know, when you relay these things, people tend to think, oh, it sounds like something from science fiction. But these episodes come with a level, as we know, of high strangeness. Our grandmother, who had been psychic, but not like, you know, demonstrating on the stage or anything like that, she didn't seem fazed by it. Yet to my brother and myself, this object represented a complete level and change in our radical approach to how we view reality. And it just hung there. It was completely silver, although it looked a little bit dirty, but that could have been a reflection from the trees upon its surface. There were no markings, no sound. And then it moved, because when we asked our grandmother what was it, and she said, I'll never forget, she said these were her words, the fairies had come to take a closer look at us. And then it moved towards the first floor bedroom windows, then up to what would have been the third floor, but the second bedroom, and then over the house. And we ran in through the house, across the hall, and into the front room to the other end of the house, and watched it disappear very quickly. So that began the episodes of high strangeness. And we'd had a lifelong experiences of seeing UFOs at close range, very close range. But the reality of this really sunk in. It's too long a story to go into. But when I had what they call an abduction in the winter of 1989 in the village of Marston Mortain, that was when I really wanted to investigate the phenomena.
Very interesting. Well, Ronald, what about you? I mean, I'm sure you had very similar experiences, you know, being identical twins, but was there anything different that happened for you at an early age?
No, not then. There is something, I think when we were 6 years old, me and Philip, but I can't be certain until I have regression, professional regression. I'm not going to go down that road because, you know, it makes me laugh when people say, well, you need to be regressed. Well, you just can't open up a phone book and find someone to regress you. You have to take very careful measures, steps.
But the beginning of it for me was when I was 13 with Philip, with our grandmother, and we had seen this orb the size of a football. It wasn't very high up when it arrived. It was technology. When we both saw this thing, it was technology. It didn't make any noise. There were no scenes. I know people, you know, they'll say, "Oh, come on, it's a balloon." It wasn't. It was like something from Doctor Who. So that's the only way to describe it. And I refer to it as an electronic eye. Someone brashly said, "Does it have eyelashes?" I think they're being sarcastic. No, it doesn't. It was an orb, but I felt that we were being watched by it, as it hung over our heads.
Yeah.
So but there again, in that time in 1982, when you're 13, you've got no idea what it is. No one talks about UFOs. No one talks about the dead or paranormal events. We had to keep quiet. So after that incident, it just remained very private, very quiet. No one spoke about it until much later in life, when you can actually retell these things, when it's a little bit more accepting, I think.
Now, at what point did you both feel like that this was a very unusual experience and you needed to start looking into it more, and that this could possibly be off-planet contact? We'll start with you, Philip.
Yeah, that was during the so-called, and I say so-called because we're still not sure what it is, abduction in 1989, which happened in the village of Marston Mortain in Bedfordshire. And I came home from work. I'm not going to go into the actual episode because it's quite long-winded. But needless to say, through the experience, there was a physical part and there was a non-physical part where I found myself being drawn through solid matter through this so-called abduction. And the interaction was very physical. And this led me then to try to understand. It did come through as an alien theme. To me, they were aliens, as we call them, greys. There were 3 reptilians. And one of the things that I found within the media was that when I brought this story out through a book many years ago through Believe, the publishers wanted me to retract the middle part of the intrusive medical investigation because it was embarrassing. And so you could see the media's interpretation of what they wanted, what they didn't want. When you're trying to be honest and truthful, laying all the cards on the table, I wanted to find out what the Greys were, what they were doing, how they were doing it, and what part they played within this whole cycle of what we call life. And this opened a can of worms for me. And I then developed several theoretical applications because that's all any of us have. And I'm open to all forms of speculation. My brother and I always laugh within each other and say, we're not going to state this is what it is because we just don't know. But the level of interaction left physical marks, physical scars. And I wanted to understand on a kind of like, although I'm not a scientist, on a scientific level investigations, what we were dealing with. And it opened up, as I said before, this whole new paradigm of different approaches to the subject, trying to nail it into a small box and saying this is a physical construct. I think that we're now beginning to realize that this could be anything but, and it could be something that operates on some kind of interdimensional reality. That somehow morphs itself into our reality. And this is why there appears to be 2 stages to contact. One is the viewing of a UFO, and the other then appears to integrate itself on a personal level of psychic integration. So it's a personal experience that the person goes through. So this is interesting through our research of what we're looking at in terms of what exactly is this force? What is it? And where is it coming from?
Very interesting. And what about you, Ronald? Was it around the same time that you started to really kind of take this seriously and then look into this and wonder if this was a extraterrestrial phenomenon?
Yes, I suppose so. With the orb, the electronic eye, as I refer to it, with our grandmother in 1982, that winter I was taken, but they weren't greys. And the interesting thing is, my abduction and Philip's were 7 years apart, and yet we were born 7 minutes apart. This only came to light about a year ago, wasn't it?
A year ago, yeah.
But mine was not the greys. Mine was very strange. In fact, it was quite horrifying for me. And I've only seen them once then, whatever they are. but they were like men, but I refer to them as the doctors, but they weren't men. They were very strange. They wore not armor as such, but they were like armored. They were completely clad from head to toe, and their faces were reminiscent, very modern take of the World War II gas masks, but these were ultra modern. So even their eyes were lenses. I couldn't even see their eyes. They were completely clad. They weren't nasty. It was to do with this operation or something they needed to do. And I was paralyzed to a degree. It's funny that you're always paralyzed, aren't you? It's always, this is a common thing, you know, within a modern wheelchair. I was taken up into this thing in the sky at night. It was very dark. I mean, I've documented it all, but they weren't nasty, but they were very forceful. And I knew when I was before them, sitting before them, I mean, this was nearly 40 years ago when this happened. I mean, they spoke English. They were authoritative. Well, the one in charge was. The others didn't say anything, but then they proceeded to do what they were going to do. But I don't know exactly what they did, because after that, they knocked me out and dropped me down back to my bed. Now, the interesting thing I hit upon, or we discussed, you find that, you know, if they can knock you out prior to an apparent or alleged operation, if that's what they did, if that's what they were, why can't they just knock you out completely to save all the horror? It's as if they want you to see them, you see. And it's nasty. So that was my initial contact with them, as I refer to them as the doctors. And they tried to scramble it up afterwards by showing me an image, a hologram or something of the Cheshire Cat, the head of it, which was, I might add, for a 13-year-old, absolutely horrifying. So when they put me back down, they projected this huge head of a Cheshire Cat, their version of a Cheshire Cat. I mean, he put Lewis Carroll's version to shame, because he had all his teeth, and it was horrifying. But I knew, you know, back in 1982, 3D technology was crude, you know, really crude. We had those crude glasses to watch Jaws on the 3D glasses. They didn't work very well. They tried, but this technology was staggering. So he hung there and he was wavering, and then he disappeared. But it took me many years to work out the cat might well have been an insurance policy on their behalf, so that when I go to see a psychologist, I say to him, you know, what's happened? It'll say, oh, hang on. You just frightened the doctors, and the cat is just some residue of Alice in Wonderland. This is what troubled me, because it makes them very smart. They know us very well. Folklore as well.
Yes.
That is
so
fascinating.
That's what initially got me into this. Now, I left that then, after that experience. You can't tell anyone. You can't walk into a doctor and tell them. You can't tell anyone. But I hid it until it was in my late 40s, early 50s, where I felt a bit more comfortable. It's good that other people are talking about it, especially with the Laughlin, the mega UFO conference by Bob Brown and his team. That they're wonderful, because they open up about it and they allow people to speak about their ideas.
Yes, that is great, and it's great that a lot more people are starting to come out with their experiences now. Between these first major experiences that you both had, and when you actually started coming out and talking about it, had you had any other experiences or encounter with similar beings, or even the same beings? We can start with Philip.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of this stemmed back to our childhood. We used to live on the property in England of somewhere called Bignell House, which was created, I believe, from the ascendants of Sir Francis Drake. Now, we came from a poor family, and my mother worked as a assistant and a servant kind of capacity for the family that lived in this mansion. So we lived on the property, and some very bizarre things happened there. And I've spoken to the wonderful Kathleen Marden, who's been very helpful in listening to most of the things that occurred there that are kind of blocked, certainly with regards to memory. And I kept having a repeated dream over and over again of these stone circles and a tower in the middle. And within the dream, there was an urgency to find the correct route from one stone to the other in this circle to gain entry into the tower. Now, I'm not making things fit here, and I certainly don't work that way, because both my brother and I, like many other respected researchers or whoever, we're all important, no matter what you're doing within this field, even if you're interested in it. You know, I'm not saying that this is a screen memory to an abduction, but what was very strange was when I had the last dream of this. We were in this property now, and we're probably talking, it could have been 10 years ago, where I had it, I closed my eyes, I couldn't open my eyes, I was awake until the whole sequence of the dream finished, where I found myself in the stones, and I drew it, and I had an opportunity to show my mother, and I said, Mum, do you know where this is? She said, yes. I used to take you past that place on the property of Bignell House every day when we were young kids. So I think it's, most ufologists, researchers are right in ascertaining that this stems from childhood. But the really nasty part about this is that most of them are hidden within certain aspects of the psyche, where you would assume that there were strange things that happened to you. When you start looking into them, it's not like you're trying to make things fit, but something strange happened then. So I think that we're looking at something that occurs repeatedly for many, many people. It's not something that occurs on one occasion. For instance, the abduction that I had in 1989 really was the eye-opener for me in terms of our understanding of reality and what the greys are and where they may come from and their intentions. This brought in areas of cloning and the soul and other avenues which are very multi-complexed. But I may have had another, what we call abduction, many years later, and in this same property, where I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning with a full bladder, embarrassing, but there was a raw rumble over the house and these lights went out. And when I went to the bathroom, which we all have to do at some point in the day or night, I found that my North American t-shirt was round the wrong way, which is impossible to do because the back is higher than the front. Now, I could turn around and say, oh yes, I was abducted. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is it is pretty close. I have no recall if there was anything that happened to me during that time, nothing at all. But what's strange is that I remembered the whole incident without regression of the 1989 event as clear as day. And that's something that's haunted me. And another researcher, very cleverly, Pierre Sabac here in England, put a piece of this together, made me aware of what a certain grey had been doing that seemed to be mimicking what my brother had been doing earlier in the evening before the abduction happened to me in the early hours of the morning. So we are looking at a multifaceted, multi-complex and possibly multi-dimensional problem that we're still all trying to get our heads around, but it is fascinating. It's incredible.
It definitely is. And Ronald, anything to add to that? Did you have any ongoing experiences from childhood to when you actually started speaking about it?
No, as I said, from the age of 6, there's something there. And I know it sounds very bizarre. That's the only time I've seen them, the doctors, in 1982, or they gave this impression of being medically sound or in a medical environment. I was taken up anyway. But I might add on that account is that after that, it was horrifying because I used to prop books against the door. Even though they took me up, they had destroyed my sense of security. So we even had an old guitar because back then we lived in a Victorian house, nice big spacious rooms. Didn't mean to say you were rich, it's just the way they were, the big spacious rooms. But I was frightened of the dark, you see. So we had an old broken guitar. So I used to prop that up against the door. And ironically, they took me up. So they really did damage
through the
a
ceiling,
sense of security there. But the doctors know I have seen, to my mind, and I'm absolutely honest with you, I've seen nothing, only the UFOs. We saw them now after those things, whatever they were, people say they're alien. I don't know what they were, interdimensional, part of the psyche we've not yet explored. We can't answer it, but they were real. They were real. When he spoke to me, he even knew my name. And that really shocked me when I was in his presence, their presence. He called me by my name, and that I remember stiffening because I didn't know who they were, but they certainly knew who I was. So that troubled me because whatever these things are, they know us very well. As I said, even our tastes, our fads and fancies. I mean, the Cheshire Cat, I doubt if aliens would conjure a thing like that up. It's as if they plucked it out of there somewhere, but this makes them very dangerously smart, because they used that against me, you see. And that didn't come easy. That took me 30 years to work that out. But apart from that, as I said, the one that's troubling me is when we were 6, being twins. I don't know if that makes you special or not. I wouldn't have thought so. If they can clone, why would they need twins? If that's what they're doing, you know, why would they need twins? Why would they be interested in twins? We just don't know. Is it genetic? I don't know. But there was something when we were 6, because I had a flashback, and it's only recently, but it's so obscured. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff, and you see this memory, and bang, it's gone. But there behind it, they are the Greys. I saw them. Now, I've always made it quite clear I have never seen a Grey. Even the doctors, I don't know what was behind all that get-up. I have no idea. People try and say, oh, could it be the Greys? I'm not going to add to that because I don't know what they were. To me, they were humanoid, but they weren't, right? There was something odd about them. But this did, when we were 6, there's something to do with them. And it's a slap in the face for me because, you know, you question about, are the Greys really what they are? Or are they something that's in vogue? Is something else creating these as to suit what's in taste, you know, in vogue? We question all this.
And the other thing is that it makes me laugh because we're twins, people get us mixed up. And Roddy will say, I've never seen a grey. And they'll say, well, hang on, I thought he did see greys. And of course, that's me. So it gets a little bit confusing.
To us to being liars.
But yeah,
yes.
yeah. So, but the last major sighting of the UFOs that were witnessed by other people, and thank God my niece caught them on camera, which has been analysed, was on the 9th of April 2016 at 11:15 at night. And that was incredible because the 3 huge objects were waiting and hanging over our house when we come back from some friends for a meal. And this was late. And we haven't seen anything since the 9th of April.
They were quite low. They were about 90 feet up.
Yeah.
They were like the spheres. I would imagine they were like the one that saw us and Grandma in 1952. The Foo Fighters, should we call them that? Because they followed planes around in the Second World War.
So the question is, why? Why do they do this? We're trying to work out that, okay, so people see them and they are witnessed, and on very rare occasions they're photographed or filmed. But then you're left with this sense of, well, why wasn't anything explained to me? Why didn't they, whoever they are, tell us what this means? Why? Because when they arrived, again, that level of high strangeness, there was no one around, there was no sound.
When they appeared, this last lot, the 3 of them, the Foo Fighters, as I call them, there were 3 of them.
They were huge.
They were not military.
They were huge.
But they were not military. They are not military. When you're in their presence, you know. You just know. All instinct, all rationality is dissolved. Everything we've been taught is dissolved because these are something extremely different. I did notice when they were hanging over us and then they started to maneuver in some strange positions.
Yes.
I can't remember the position.
I remember.
He does.
Yeah.
But they were moving. There was, when we spoke, with the only 2 there, when we spoke, it's as if, you know, when it snows heavy and your voice has that sort of reverberation.
Yes.
That's exactly what it was like.
Yeah.
I then, because we think and think and think, you have to. I then said to Philip, well, it's like they have surrounded the area with a bubble. Something to either shield time, to stop people seeing them at that point, because that's a busy road then. This was 11:15 at night. Or whether they had stopped time, not mechanically, but somehow they had frozen time. I will never, ever forget the way they moved away.
Yes. And you
never forget the way they moved off.
The other thing, that it's not a busy road. I mean, but you normally, it's a quiet area, but you normally get cars coming down all the time.
All the lights were off.
All the lights were off.
There was no one around. There was nothing. You could hear a pin drop.
No person walking their dog. There was no one coming from the pub from up the road. There was nothing. And then thank God that other people had witnessed this. We thought that it would make the papers and the local papers. I refused to phone up the papers to report it because they just take the mickey. But the next day, on the 10th of April, what was really bizarre, and you know, we're not one of these people that says, oh, it's the Men in Black or it's the Secret Service or whatever. But the very next day, slightly earlier, probably about 8 or maybe 9 o'clock, there was a ruckus over our house. And when we came out, there was a helicopter. It wasn't a black helicopter, it was a white helicopter. It wasn't a police one. And it was leveled like that so that you could see, when we went into the garden, the pilots, we could see the 2 pilots in the front, and it was bent down like that so that we could see them, and it was going around 1, 2, 3, and then went off. Now, my devious mind, or the logical part of my mind, was thinking, well, if anyone, and I've got to make a little bit of a joke here, if anyone's phoned up and said, oh, excuse me, I'd like to report the UFOs I saw, they'll say, oh, you mean the helicopter? Because, you know, let's be real here. Some people do mix up their dates and times.
It could possibly have been that they were just looking for someone. We are not paranoid. You just have to think of every aspect.
But it was very strange because it was very low and it was tilted. We could see the pilots, they were looking at us because we could see them going around 3 times. So we're not saying that that's in any way linked with the UFOs that were seen the night before, but it just seemed uncomfortably close. For just, you know, it's very rare we get one coming over our house.
We didn't want this. I didn't want this, you know,
right.
As if you're going to put your reputation and many others on the line by stating that you've seen these, what they call alien. I don't think they are. I think there's something different there. There's something strange. You know, you're not going to put your reputation on the line. Imagine what people, I know, even at my old work colleagues, I knew what they were thinking. They smiled, but some of them wore the crocodile grin, you see. So you're going to have that. And because they'll know, they can dig you up, it's easy, it's Google, they can do anything they want. We're not special or anything like that, but I did not want this. But when you have been down the rabbit hole, which they call, you've been down, me quite literally seeing the blasted Cheshire Cat, which they showed me, when you've been down there, you can't let it go. How can anyone tell you to, you know, you're not going to talk about it? Because you are. You want to know what they are. You want to know what they were. And however long it takes, the chances are we may never know, because this paradox has been happening for decades and decades. The Roswell crash, I mean, that I believe happened. But of course, what do they do? Of course, they will cover it up, because that we must clearly state the military announced they had catched a flying disc to then change the testimony because they realized, oh, good Lord, what have we got? So, you know, if they can mistake a flying saucer for a weather balloon, God help our military. I wouldn't want to leave them in charge of nuclear silos, would you?
No. And you're exactly right. Once you go down these rabbit holes, once you have an experience, which I've also had an experience myself, you can't go back from that. You have this sense of knowing that no one can really take that away from you. And, you know, it's just something that people have to experience for themselves to know what that feels like. I do want to remind everyone in the audience, if you have any questions for Ronald and Philip, just go ahead and leave those in the chat and we'll try to address them as soon as we can. Now, I know, Ronald, you said you didn't have any regressions done. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Philip, have you had any regressions done?
Who, me, Philip?
Yes, Philip.
No, there was a guy some years ago who did try to regress me. He was connected to a famous author who'd written these books on past lives, this type of thing. And he tried to unravel the stone circle mystery. But I think perhaps I may be too strong or too unwilling to be regressed, because to be honest with you, I didn't get hardly anything, or there was a part of my mind that was not submissive to that process. And I felt very uncomfortable for me wanting to generate false imagery from someone who did try. But, you know, there's, you know, if anyone, I'd rather have Kathleen Marden do it, because she's got a technique that is absolutely sound. She knows what she's doing, like many other professional regressionists. I'm not, you know, bringing the chat down here, but I just, you know, kind of like felt, no, it's not going to happen at this point. But one of the things I will say is that when people tell you that you are mistaken, that it's because you're interested in science fiction and you've written some children's books and that you are inventive. So basically they want someone who is, excuse my French, stupid and brain dead to be abducted. And I wanted to find out whether or not, first of all, if I was lying or the system that we serve was lying. And I betcha any money, my decision of what I discovered, like we all will, and all know to a degree of who is really lying. But you do, I had suffered like many other people. I don't ask for sympathy, I'm a big lad now, but I suffered through media outlets, through the revelation of the experience, most notably the abduction, back in the winter of 1989. And you can see how the media are frenzied, how they want these ridiculous seeming stories, and they won't allow you, if it's live, to express yourself or to explain yourself, that you and why you have to, reveal yourself as a true, honest person, or whether or not it's edited and then cut all the main bits out. So I think the system that we serve has created more of a problem. If they had been honest and open to begin with, most notably in the inception of Roswell, then I think we would be in a very different area, or that we will find ourselves where we're going towards with a so-called disclosure, whatever that is.
Yes, there's another thing I'd like to point out, Chris, is the fact that when we researched this, when I decided to go into the subject of UFOs and extraterrestrials, when I did my research, something didn't quite add up, because I read all the old books, of abductees being taken, and these aliens are concerned for world peace, and they keep harping on about the concern for nuclear and atomic warfare or nuclear warfare, the harm or some cosmic catastrophe. Well, something didn't quite add up, because all right, yes, if we did have visitors in the 50s, I'm not denouncing the Eisenhower possibility. I'm not denouncing that, because that could well have happened. They may well have warned him about atomic warfare or testing weapons. And if we were an advanced species, I would do the same. So I'm not denouncing that. What I am is questioning, if they were so concerned, why can't they just nullify them themselves? We're scratching our heads, left scratching our heads with this destructive, devastating power through the atom we've created. They've nullified them. We build more. They nullify them again. Job done. We can't work it out. We can't build nuclear weapons. And this is globally. They haven't. So it's either a deception, or they're just saying, okay, blow yourselves up. But the thing is, someone said, some person had written, when I announced that they haven't knocked out the Saddle, someone said they have. I mean permanently, not temporarily, permanently, just dissolve them, So that was a bone of contention with me, as to what this, no wonder you're left confused, because you're thinking, well, if they're so concerned for world peace, why don't they meet the president? Why can't they just arrive and then make us a better species? They're always hiding, coveting, in shadow. And this is very strange, that's what for me personally, a lie was rising with it, a deception, because they hide and take you, as Philip Mantle rightly stated in his book, without consent. They take you without consent, just as the doctors do. Why do they do it?
Yeah, so we also have to be wary of, anyone can claim just about anything, however sensational. But I think when you start to research, and you are linked, like yourself and me and Ronnie, with the most brilliant minds in the field of research and with exploration, you kind of can understand and know what is true and what is not. And the way that I see it is that the abduction phenomena is very multi-complex. And what's interesting is that I believe that we're dealing with an intelligence that is always one step ahead of us. They seem to integrate within our folklore, or as the well-known and wonderful Dr. Jacques Vallée has pointed out within his works as well. But going past that point, my interest was more into the Greys and what they represented. And because of the experience I had, this opened up a new area of research, because I was wondering why it was that we have a species that are interested in reproduction for a species themselves that cannot reproduce. And when I went beyond that level of research, or level of research, I found that we have to look at what we represent, because it's all very well looking out at them. We know very little about what we are, where we come from, what we represent. Most people are of the opinion that we are automatons, that we're biological robots with a sell-by date. I disagree. And I think trying to put the pieces together shows us that there is a level of consciousness which seems to supersede the physical reality that we exist in. And this here, the instrument, the receiver, the translator, may be part of the answer for these alternative dimensions of reality. Because I always give a simple analogy. Think of your mobile phone. You've got the physical hardware, and you have the signal that you can't see that carries information that's unique to you and connects to your device, depending on the ability of your device and how much you use it. When the physical device dies, the signal will return to source, to its original source of origin, or it will find another instrument to work with. And this may open up some ideas for us that we've been working on with how these other dimensions of reality are able to integrate into our reality, so it were. So, without getting too complicated and not giving too much away, this is what we've been looking at in terms of these alternative dimensions of awareness. Back in the heyday, in the 80s, if you dared speak about UFOs, or you spoke about life after death, it was always the curtain twitching moments where you had to talk about it behind the curtains, the whisperings behind the curtains, and then you had to get on with your day without mentioning anything of it. And people then, I mean, we're of the old school, were very angry, very anti with it. You're imagining, you've been watching too much science fiction, my young lad, you have. You've been watching too much Doctor Who and Star Wars. So that's all that you've got, you see. And of course, that's where, but now, thankfully, I think the huge expense of ufologists, researchers, even those interested, not just those that have abductions or experiences, are now enforced to say, hang on just a minute. The system has been telling us, I call them the system, has been telling us that we're all liars and that we've all been barking up the wrong tree, that we're in fairyland. Well, the way I see it is that has caused a lot of psychological damage as well to the individual. So if they come forward and they say it's reality, what are they going to do about those people that have gone through this experience in a negative light,
The sad thing is that people, we know this, you know this yourself, Chris, who have seen alleged as people with sarcastically labeled flying saucers or aliens or little green men. They have used this at work many times. It's used as a weapon against people to destroy their reputation and to make them look like clowns. But it's very comforting to know that even our Navy, your Navy and the military, are actually releasing small snippets of these things, which they're acknowledging as real. So why are they lying? Would they lie? Is it possible they're lying to maintain control and keep order to the system? You just keep your noses pressed to the mobile phones and don't question? Or is it because they know something and it's very, very dark and they're being kind and keeping it from us? I'm personally done with all this nonsense of peace-bearing federation of sorts. This is only my views, no one else's. If they want to believe that, that's fair enough. I don't believe it. I think it's hogwash. I believe there's something unnatural, something quite frightening, and it's as if it's toying with us. Why are they always one step ahead? Why do they play with us? Why do they want you to see them? As I already gave the hypothesis of if they can knock you out prior to an alleged operation, why can't they knock you out before they take you? If they can do it, but it's as if they want you to see them. That might be a clue. That might be a clue.
It may be. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on right now with this whole disclosure. Of course, I'm very wary with the sources that it's coming from, our own government and our own media. They are semi-painting it as a threat, but it's very fascinating to see how this is going to unfold, what new information is going to come out. This month, actually, they're supposed to be coming out with new information any day from this document dump. But like I said, I take all of that with a grain of salt. I think that it's people like you, your testimony, the experiencer, the abductee's testimony is the most important that we have right now, because it's firsthand accounts. And now that people are becoming more comfortable with these stories, it's a great time for people like yourself to come out with these stories so we can get more of the bigger picture. So I think that we live in fascinating times right now, and it's a good time to get all this information out. I do have a question from Peter from the chat. He asks if I could follow up regarding the epiphany that I believe it was Ronald had about cloning in souls, and what details he could mention about this.
Oh, that's Philip.
Philip, okay, Philip.
Well, all I'm going to say, I have, mentioned this quite a number of times. We're still working on several other theoretical models. But we have to understand that my understanding of cloning in the spiritual sense, if you want me to go into it, I can, but very briefly, if I can cut around the edges here. I don't believe that we live and die and that's it, and consciousness is snuffed out. I believe that there's a continuation. Take out religious ideologies, because we come in with a blank canvas of a mind, and we build upon those experiences that I believe that we take back to what we call the other side. So there is evidence to presuppose that there is continuation of the soul. No matter how much we try to, flare it up or make it seem so wonderful, there does seem to be conscious survival beyond this realm. Now, what's interesting is that the abduction phenomena seems to mirror the near-death experience in many ways, because there's a sense of timelessness. Communication is done through telepathy, but with an NDE, you see, it's a normal process. It's a process that's to occur when we die, whereas an abduction is forcibly done. So it could be that the Greys are integrating the real part of you and bringing them into their space, their dimension of awareness. They have to have a point of reference in order to connect with you. And this is why I think it's important for you to remain awake when they are performing their procedures. There's some kind of psychic link. But why is it that they're interested in reproduction for a species that cannot reproduce? And I asked this question to myself. And it's possible, it's feasible that if we as a human species began to biologically clone ourselves without coming through the correct channel of reproduction or the birthing cycle of the waters of the womb, carrying the memories from this side to the other side, then I think that on a ethical level, we can't answer that question. But let's suppose that we did. That biological form that's being cloned will only have the memory of one single incarnation, which means it's outside the process of creation. So where we go to, they don't go. And it's feasible or possible that a certain faction, and I say very lightly a certain faction of Greys, are interested in a reproduction because of this process of rebirthing. Now, the big question is, we need to ask ourselves, why, and my brother and I have both spoken about this when we've been doing our research. We argue, well, a nice argument. Why would an intelligent species go through some form of devolution by integrating themselves into our kind, humankind, through a birthing cycle? It doesn't seem to make sense. And so the Greys also come in very silently and they go out very silently. It's like they go through the walls and doors. They're like shadows in the night. They scramble the memories. That does not appear to my mind to be some kind of understanding organism, as it were, or force. So if there was this galactic federation, we have to be respectful of all beliefs. Then they've broken that code of conduct, or at least this rogue group of Greys. And we do laugh because Kathleen Martin did laugh with us, the niece of Betty Barney Hill, very accomplished lady, very beautiful soul. So there could have been this rogue group of Greys going around, bed-assed Greys, like cowboys. We do have a sense of humor with that. But I think on a technical level, we're not just seeing the abduction phenomena here. We're not just seeing the UFOs here. There is a much deeper reason as to why these beings are doing what they're doing. And I know after meeting Dr. David Jacobs briefly in Arizona some years ago, that he has his ideas about them, and the good doctor is to be respected for his opinions because that's all we have. But I think there's a much deeper reason. I think that as a species, as a human species, we may not ring in the alarm bells. We may be moving ourselves into a destructive capacity, and that the Greys perhaps are salvaging, or have been for a long time, those parts of what make us what we are for themselves, for their own ends. So without going into too much detail, I can't go into too much detail because it will take forever. And I always joke and say, you know, we do have a sense of humor for those out there, because when on these shows with the debunkers or the negative people, they attack you for any reason, it doesn't matter. We have a sense of humor as well, which is important to the work.
See, I don't agree with
That's
some
best.
of the theories Philip says, you know, this is what's good, because it's like we're batting ideas, because we have always
definitely.
we've always been a cruel species, we've always been horrible. So I don't think it's any kind of salvation. This is something that's very intelligent and extremely witty, in the sense that it can nab you always in the dead of night when there's no one around, or they can put them to sleep, they just snatch you. Night, I call them the night snatchers. But I haven't myself personally seen a grey, only then the vision or this thing I had when I was 6. But being an artist as well, and I'm not going to tempt fate here, because I wouldn't mind seeing one. But there again, you back out, don't you? Because you say no, I don't think I want to see one of those nasty little things, you know. But just to gauge what they are, because we're very good at perceiving things. Humans are very, very smart, because they have very good memories, a lot of us. So, you know, when you look at these things, we give them different description of them, like the texture of their skin, the color of them, and popular to contrary belief, they're not always gray, are they? And one witness reported them actually having been freshly made. So are these things actually like things we send to Mars, the robots we send to Mars to act as our eyes and ears? Are these things manufactured? Is something else behind them? Are we seeing their true features? You see what I mean? Or are they just molded or created in a fashion to suit a particular job or particular trend?
Yes, that's a great question. Now, I do have a question for Philip about the Greys. The Greys that you've encountered, were they the taller or smaller Greys? And were they more kind of robotic or humanoid-like? Kind of,
That's very
of like
interesting.
hive mind-ish, you know?
Well, the only way I can explain the one that was on board the craft, as we call it, when they had finished their embarrassing procedure, seemed mechanical in nature. Now, I'm not saying straight away that this is a robot, because I didn't know, but it was cold and it was harsh, and there were 2 other Greys that escorted me off the craft, that floated down. But there was one I will never forget, the last one I saw, that was standing in front of me, fully uniformed. I refer to him as Noddy, although he didn't look quite like Noddy, the famous author, children's author Enid Blyton, the J.K. Rowling of her time. This Grey was, and did scare the hell out of me, because I seemed to recognize him from somewhere. He didn't, very interesting and very, very good question, because I don't know. All we have is theoretical content. That's all we have. When I saw him, seeing animated plastic moving, because he appeared synthetic on some level. Now, people will jump and say, oh, it's a robot. It could be. I'm not arguing that. But it had life in it. It had a force in it, an energy in it. And it was the only thing that, well, I couldn't get anything out of it, because it seemed angry with me. It seemed really peeved off with me. And I wanted to hit it. But it was standing with its arms folded. It has been illustrated. My brother's done a really wonderful rendering recently of it, and it had a tall hat on its head, not like a classic wizard's hat, but it seemed quite smart within its uniform. So he'd come across as very intelligent, very knowing, but there was no communication from him to me. It was almost as if I was being scolded for something that I don't know what I'd done wrong, and that I was going to hit him, but I couldn't move, because I thought, well, you're angry with me, I'm angry with you because of what you put me through. I had no idea, but it was fascinating, and I seem to recall him from somewhere else. Now, I'm not going to go and say it's this or that, because I have no idea, but on a deeper level, there was a connection, almost like a psychic connection. Like, it's hard to explain in words, because if you say something, people say that's what you said, and you've got to stick with that. It was, uncanny. He frightened the crap out of me, but I also felt like there was some vast intelligence behind that being. Watching animated plastic move, because he didn't move much, he seemed, there was some energy in him, or some force in him, or some power, you know, living force. So I don't know, but I will tell you that it's a very good question. And as I said, both my brother and I are open to all forms of speculation because we just don't know. But hey, it's good to, you know, push the boundaries of theoretical content out there and bash it out. But the experience, now that was interesting because a lot of people, when I read afterwards about their abductions, they appeared very physical interaction. But if we go back to Betty and Barney Hill case with them back in New Hampshire in 1961, theirs came through in dream state. So this force is able to completely disable our understanding of reality consciously through the interim of their abduction program. You see what I mean there, Chris? I mean, it's a fascinating question, but something I've been looking for years and years. And you know what? I have to joke, and I do laugh with many other researchers, no matter how many times you bang on different theories or look at different ways, because I embrace all ideologies, is that we still have a blank page. Because those buggers, the Greys or whoever, are not wanting to tell us who they are, where they're from, and have a decent conversation with you. You know, it's like they don't want that. They want to keep that distance from you. Very bizarre.
That is. And Ronald, earlier you were saying that, you know, it seems that they can pretty much change the fabric of our reality. They have such advanced technology and intelligence. And the more I hear about different accounts from contactees, abductees, we hear from about the different craft that these beings probably could be using. It seems like we are so small on the scale of what they're dealing with their intelligence and their technology, that we could be an experiment for these beings, just a small experiment in the scope of their existence. What do you think about that?
Yes, I mean, the doctors, as I refer to them, I mean, in 1982, as I said, they know us very well. In fact, thinking about it, when I wrote my book based on the entire UFO paradox, they are mentioned in it, or we go back in time as I try and remember all I can. So I said, I don't colour or fabricate anything. It's the worst thing you can do.
No.
The worst thing you can do. But he, the one in charge, I was in their presence, he knew me so well. I mean, when he called me by my name, that was very shocking. So this got me thinking about them, and they were aloof, not in a material sense, but in an authoritative sense. You couldn't argue with them. You couldn't argue with him. And I got the impression that it was directives they followed. He was not going to take no for an answer. So, of course, you're powerless in the grasp of their spell, you know. So this makes them very formidable to me. And people will say, you know, Chris, they'll turn around and say, well, you had a bad experience. This is why you're so negative about it. I'm not negative. All I'm doing is narrating what happened, the words he said, what happened during this, as they call it, abduction. I call it snatching. I don't like the word abduction, and I've only seen them once. So whatever they did, you know, they screwed me up big time. And I have no idea what they did. But yes, extremely advanced. Now, when I was taken up into it, it was dark and I couldn't see what it was. It was dark. There was something dark in space, if that makes any sense. How can anything be darker than space? The sky was not pitch black, but there was something hanging there. So I couldn't see exactly what it was, what it looked like. It was just a great big thing there. You know, and I was prior to be taken into it, through the roof. So they're able to dissolve matter, or I couldn't understand it. You could understand it. I mean, a child of 13, you'd go crazy. And I think I made the right choice. The right choice to just bury it.
Well, you told me.
But of course, yes. But of course, it's always in the, as you said, Chris, it's always in the back of the head. It's going to keep niggling and niggling. And I wouldn't leave it. as our grandfather got us into Sherlock Holmes, and ironically after that, got us into Sherlock Holmes. Although he's fictitious, I loved him, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's work, but I've learned a few things from Sherlock Holmes that he would be curious too. What were they? Is there any rational explanation to it? We're still trying to find that out. And like Philip, I'm open to all manner of speculation. I know I said I don't believe in a federation, but that's my own opinion. I'm not going to denounce it, but that's what I believe. That's how I view my world and opinions. It could well be there's a federation. I might have a slap in the face, and I'll deserve it if they arrive. But for me personally, no. I'm looking more at the darker aspects of these things.
Yes, very interesting. Now, we've had so much happen since 2017 with the mainstream disclosure. Like you guys said, more people are coming out with their own stories, but we're hearing stuff from our own military, the Pentagon. Like I said, we're supposed to have this information come out any day now from our own media and military here in the United States. Now, is it the same over in the UK? Are they kind of following suit with the US with this disclosure movement? Are they trying to be more open about this?
Well, there was some talk of the Ministry of Defense here of reopening its files. But I
Would
don't
you trust them?
No, the thing is, though, I don't understand, how are we going to see this disclosure? Even if, let's say, that the Pentagon or the military forces or whomever said, yes, UFOs are real, and so too are aliens, there's going to be an even bigger can of worms that's opened, because people will want to know, okay, so where are they? What are they? And how do they infiltrate this plane of reality? What about what have they done to me, and why did they do what they did to me? I think it's going to be amazing for researchers, because it will categorically prove that what we've been saying for all these years is right. But I think it will also come with a huge expense of more investigations. And I think that is very exciting. So I welcome it if they say, yes, they are real. That's all we want them to say.
I can't see them saying that.
No,
I just can't. And to be honest with you, Chris, would we trust what they give us? The Pentagon, would you trust them? I'm not denouncing them, as this corporation. But how can we trust it? They've lied in the past. They don't exist. They don't exist, or they make a mockery of it. They have completely made it a joke, and now they expect us to believe it. Isn't there a sense of irony in that?
I think also with this conspiracy thing, that the system that we serve needs the conspiracy to hide its conspiracy. The real difficulty now is that who is lying? Is it the aliens? We know it's also our very own people that we trust. And so this vicious circle of conspiracy that's going round in circles. So even if they came forward and said, yeah, okay, this is what we want to tell all of you people out there, there'll be people that say, you know what, I don't believe it. Now, this is the deep waters that we've got ourselves in with regards to this psychological and very clever weapon called conspiracy, because it raises doubt upon the inquiring mind of those persons who are considered a conspiracy theorist. And I'm going to say this, I'm sorry, how dare they? Because notice how it's all gone past. They'll say, oh, this is the new age now, all those people have gone and it was all there to blame, those that have passed over now, and we can move on now. No. This is going to open up an exciting realm for researchers, but also a whole host of other problems, I feel.
Yes, if they do announce that aliens are real, I personally am going to be very worried, because would you trust them? It's probably something even worse.
Yes.
Yes. You try and peek behind the curtain and you can't.
Yeah, there'll be one looking through the curtain as you open it at night. They've arrived, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, yeah, and there's all types of worries out there and theories that it could be leading to some sort of faked alien invasion from our own government to further bring their agendas together. Who knows? It's definitely something that I think we need to pay attention to, but it's also, we're living in really fascinating times that it's being talked about right now.
Yes.
Now, there is a lot of experiencers and contactees who also have paranormal experiences throughout our lives, which is another connection to all this, which makes me think that, you know, these beings may be in control of all of this, including this paranormal activity. It could be all linked together in some way. And I know that, you know, it definitely seems to be. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a connection there. This makes it even more stranger. And I've read reports of people when they've seen these UFOs, strange things happen around the house, and you know, very strange, peculiar things.
I think that perhaps the viewing of a UFO, what we call UFO or UAP, which is the new terminology, but it's still the same damn thing, whichever way you view it, just a posher word with the same force behind it. Sounds more technical, doesn't it? Very posh. But I think that when they come in, it's possible that the space that they are disabling from their dimension may indeed cause a lot of seeping through of other dimensions that are unstable. That means that when the UFO comes in or the UAP comes in, it forces its way into our matrix, and this may cause some residue. Like we send a rocket out to space that causes a hole in the eventual stratosphere of the planet. It's going to be open to some form of leak of radiation at some level. Like skin, it will repair over time. But I think that we could be looking at this whole new area that links on a psychic level. And I think that most of the force of the crafts create this instability or this area of high strangeness. So there's always a lot of paranormal activity that happens during and after a UFO event. I also think that if you look at certain geographical locations of high strangeness around the world, the remote areas around the world, another researcher, Paul Sinclair, a good friend of ours, a brilliant researcher in England, in Bempton. We've been talking about this backwards and forwards, not giving too much away, but we think that, it's also keyed to consciousness and the area as well.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes, Skinwalker Ranch, or the imprint of conscious intent. I think that these phenomena don't happen as often within large built-up areas. I think that they occur, or they disable the individual much more within remote areas. So again, looking into consciousness, and people think that when we talk of consciousness, we're talking about something that's in a box you open and close. Consciousness is a reality, because everything that we think of, eventually we bring into the field of creation. So it's there in a higher spatial state of reality.
The North American Indians, or the American Indians, put a curse on Skinwalker Ranch. So they put a curse on still with these words, conjuring these things. Is this, as you said yourself, a consciousness that can manifest into reality?
Or bring them through.
Yeah, I mean, Philip and I was saying about the Titanic, the very name christened after one of the Titans. It sank. The Terror we hear about, the ship called Terror, the very name of it, could it have conjured this beast unwittingly? You see, we have to look at this. I think that what they need is a body of people in the world to come together, good minds, to start thinking and pooling their knowledge and not arguing and bickering about their own opinions or their own conclusions, but being widely acceptable to every aspect. So we might be able to narrow it down then, if we have that body of people, an institution created to try and really study this.
And I think this here, the brain is the conduit, the corridor to mind. And I think that that we are beginning to realize that consciousness is more powerful. And we talk about remote viewing, about astral projection, near-death experiences, abductions. It goes on, and the individual is, that people that have died and come back. I know I've seen the other side on 2 occasions. When you come back, you're transformed. But you're trying to relay this to the people that you're with. And I think because we've been taken into another level of vibration, and because you're matched by that frequency, it is real. You're integrating with that reality. So we could be looking at multifaceted dimensions of awareness that can, in some levels, integrate into our sphere temporarily and overwhelm the senses and come in this way. I used to call it the eternal cosmic corridor. It should be called the eternal conscious corridor within superconscious intent. So I think that you're right. When we're dealing with the paranormal, these must fit and integrate with other parts to that complex model of what we call UFOs and the abduction phenomena. And I think that when we start to stop arguing with one another and bring a body of superminds together with no ego and say, let's put everything on the table. And we indeed try to do this here in England. Nigel Ross, who is connected with he created the National UFO Reporting Service, NUFORS, and I wrote to Parliament asking a high-ranking member within Parliament to get us all together and to disable all ego. Let's just talk about this UFO problem, bring ourselves to have a think tank with this. And do you know, I got silence back. And that just told me everything about their take on this subject. So I understand for them as well, there's people living in fear, and those in the know are just doing what they're told because they have to. I understand that. But what I love is the breakaway renegades that come forward. It's like, I want to spill the beans.
Yes. What we need, I'm talking about a global institution to
Yes.
wipe away all this ego, you know, with certain people working at MOD branches and having all the answers. They do not. They don't know. The military might be a little bit wiser to it. They might be a little bit wiser. I'm under the impression they are, but I don't think they know exactly what they're dealing with. So, you know, it's a fascinating, a very fascinating paradox. But as you can see, we're still searching. You know, I'm not going to wish to see another one. I mean, it's not a pleasant thing. You know, it's quite shocking when you see them. People seem to think, you know, one, you lie, and two, you just take it with a pinch of salt. You don't. In their presence, everything changes. Reality, as I said, dissolves. It's frightening because you realize then that there's a power above us and one that can't be explained.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that has fascinated me, and until I had my own experience, I had my doubts, you know, and I questioned it. Even after I had my experience, I was still questioning it until I had a second experience, and I was like, okay, I can't, you know, deny this anymore. But I think you're exactly right about we need to bring the fields of consciousness, the nuts and bolts researchers, the scientific researchers, and the experiencers, and people like yourself who have had these experiences together, and we would get so much further in learning about what this phenomenon really is, you know?
Yes.
Let them I mean, you know, they can bash it out in the room, can't they? But the good thing about arguments is debates. When you're in a place like that, a contained environment, you may get answers. I mean, Bright Smart will say, well, if this is what this is, then this will see what this is. It's like trying to put the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle together. The pieces are very vague, but we're trying to form a picture. And you know, the nasty thing about it is they're always one step ahead. As we said, in the 50s, they were flying saucers, and they were golden-haired, lovely, beautiful people, and then they changed to these horrendous greys that are portrayed even in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters. I loved his film, but I'm just going to say about the ending, I knew even then, I don't know why I knew, they're not as nice as that. No,
not all of them.
But he couldn't have them zapping everyone, I know. But I just remembered when I saw the film and he used the aliens in that, I thought, I don't think they're as nice as that, even though I haven't seen them myself, to mind.
I think also it gives us hope. And I think that the normal programmed society that we've been led to believe that this is just it, that life is just a reaction, that you are programmed to believe in what the system wants you to believe, that anything outside of these areas is a mere fancy and a whim. But I think for us, you and many other people, that this has opened a dimension of awareness which gives us hope, because we know that there is more to this, you know, physical, biological universe. And I think that is wonderful, not just for those people who interact with it in a love and light capacity, but also those who have suffered at the hands of their assailants. Now, we as human beings are good, and we are also bad. And people raise their hands up in total objection, saying, how dare you? But come on, why is it, I wonder, that more people prefer in a fantasy or half-truth than the truth itself? And I think that what you and we and many other brilliant researchers that we're connected with are doing are trying to put those dots together. But at the end of the day, it gives us hope to tell us that we are more than this, that there is much more beyond this physical universe as we know it. And I think that's very important because it changes you. And although we are still puzzled, it gives me an exciting feeling that, you know, there is much more to this, much, much more.
Yes, I'm right there with you. I think there's a lot more to it, and we're living in awesome times to find out about it. And Philip and Ronald, I want to thank you again so much for coming on today. That was fascinating information. I'd love to have you back on in the future because I know we kind of barely scratched the surface of some of this stuff. If people would like to find out more about you guys and your work and your books, what's the best way that they can do so?
No, Facebook, or they can find the books on Amazon. Our other books are ceased publication because they were published by publishers and they only did a print run of so many. That was back in the day when they only printed so many, like, you know.
Philip Mantle has re-released our books.
Philip Mantle has.
Under Flying Disc Press. I have a new one out called The Digital Demon, which goes into the doctors. I mean, I really go to town with this. I want to know what they are. And there's a lot of testimony there as well, which I cross-examine. But that's called The Digital Demon. That's audio, paperback, hardback now, and Kindle. And your book is called?
Yeah, Philip Mantle. He's been a great source of inspiration for my brother and myself, as has also our American compatriots, because we have a lot of wonderful friends out there as well too, who connect. But that's called, my new one's called You, the Public Deceived, the Grand UFO Deception. And what's funny here is I'm not Philip Klass, the debunker. My name is Philip Kinsella, and the title itself is to say that we have been deceived by our own people and perhaps also by the occupants, some of them at least, who have tried to fabricate themselves. Yeah, so
we're being deceived by the humans and by the aliens.
Yeah, so we don't have much going for us at the moment.
No.
But that again is available in all formats, and I'm very honoured with everything. So I'm working on some new projects, which goes into deeper theoretical content. And I always joke, and I have to say, I might end up in an asylum. And yes, we do have a sense of humour.
We're feeding the swans on a Sunday.
Yes.
That's great. Well, Ronald and Philip, thank you so much again for coming on. And like I said, we'll have you back on in the future. Enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening.